G'day everyone, welcome back to Free Kick for another episode, another pre-round preview, and our final pre-round preview of the season. And in the most auspicious of weeks, we have the most auspicious of crews. I've got everyone on board with us today. Now, I haven't actually thrown to Mel for the first time, like when I do this first off the rip. Fremantle had a great win. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I was very nervous in the second quarter there because we really needed to win that game. But currently sitting fourth on the ladder. Super excited about that. It was a great Indigenous round. Love to see the energy for that. Had a win. Should have a win next week, hopefully, the Bulldogs have kind of decided to play these last couple of weeks. So might be a spicier game than I was hoping for. But feeling good. Freo's doing well. Just all the distractions aside from how my fantasy team's going. So that's good.
Yeah, that's great. It's clear that your fantasy team's doing very well. I do have to drag you down just slightly. Fremantle are currently 5th and not 4th, and that is quite a substantial distinction.
I swear they were 4th when I looked earlier. What?
Well, you clearly didn't look
It's like
early
there's
enough.
this thing like a live ladder or something. It's wild, yeah.
They got dragged down by other teams winning.
No!
Hey, good manifestation, though, because you can still get in.
We will
The top
be
4
4th.
is always possible.
We will.
Yes, and it will actually require a Geelong win in order to be able to do it. Now, Will, where was this Geelong earlier?
I've said it a few times that Geelong has been all over the place this year. We are the only team that's kind of come close to North Melbourne, and yet we also lost in the most putrid game to Carlton. I'm just rehashing what I said last week, but I don't really know where this has come from. I think we are a chance to beat Adelaide this week. I'm not sure if we will, but I think we're a chance, which is more than could be said probably 3-4 weeks ago when I would have assumed it would be maybe 40 points if we were lucky.
Everything you just said is wild.
Everything is wild.
Yeah. Let's start with the only team that's as close to North Melbourne. What about these Hawks? We're only a draw behind them.
No. In-game.
You've had enough time. You've had enough time leading off the crew. I was sitting there going like, who do I throw to first? I'm like, I feel like I haven't thrown to Mel first for a while. I'll do that because I'm not going to throw for bloody Hawthorn again. They nearly bottled it. I think Melbourne with Kate Hall possibly wins.
I think we were we should have been miles ahead at 3/4 time, and we did let them come back into it, but we held on because we're apparently a very good football team, which has me very excited. But look, I didn't want to cut off the Geelong time because I do think Geelong is a good chance. I would love it if you could beat 3 of the top 4 this season and still not make finals. That would be hilarious.
Hey, we're still technically able to make it this week, provided some very unlikely results happen.
Yes, but what you're relying on is the Bombers doing the most Bombers thing of all time. After having lost their probably only dedicated ruck on the list in Steph Wales. So I definitely think that the writing, it could definitely be written in the stars to see Geelong make it into the finals. I'm assuming, Will, if we're going to talk about the thing you enjoyed most from the weekend, it's probably 6.
6 from Lingy. Most ever by a Geelong player in a single game. It also took Lingy to the highest ever home and away total 4 goals with a round to go, which is pretty exciting. 21 goals for the season.
I would like to think that supreme performance, all-time performance from Aisling Maloney is in part due to the fact that I had specifically called out other podcasts or media people that had been questioning whether or not Aisling Maloney had been better this year or last year, and she was like, let me just provide another reason and prove it to you. That was a spectacular game. Beth Schilling, she's a good player, but I just don't think she's got the yards of pace to be able to keep up with Maloney.
Well, it was actually quite interesting because I reckon Beth Schilling was probably just about West Coast best other than a certain Ella Roberts. She actually played a ripping game. She just happened to be on the player who was best on ground, which means that you have to take a few points away.
Yeah, it was certainly an interesting one. Mel, what was your highlight from the weekend?
Oh, we're going full circle. We're back to Mel. You're so used to throwing to me last. But
We're just trying to ignore Johnny.
I get to have a second highlight, which is good.
I feel like I've almost hit my max amount of Hawthorn love.
That's good, no, because I actually have one.
That's great. Please do tell.
I got to go to the only game in Melbourne this weekend because there was only one, which was quite sad. But it was the Wurundjeri double matchup for the Indigenous round at Vic Park on Sunday afternoon. It was a beautiful day. The sun was out. And it was a lot closer than I thought it would be. And my rookie kicked a beautiful goal. I was there with someone who supports Carlton, and so I was yabbering on about some Carlton players, realising I actually don't know that many. And I was like, 17, Dana Finn, that's the only one I've really been paying attention to. And she smashed it out of the park, so that was great.
That was an awesome goal to win it, given that she hadn't kicked a goal up to that point.
No, she had not.
And it was a wonderful 75 for my utility as well.
Yeah, my bench really benefited from that.
Guys, you'll get your time in the sun to talk about how you stuffed that up. Jono, what was your highlight?
It had to be watching Jazz Fleming in that first half just take that game away from the D's, because that was a beautiful, beautiful half of footy. If it wasn't for Ash Maloney, I would have said she was the player of the week, because that was a phenomenal game.
Look, I do think it was phenomenal. I probably would have had Ash McCarthy's 3 goals against GWS as pipping above, and also Jazz Garner kicking 2 against Adelaide, and also just monstering in the midfield.
So but basically what we're saying is, Jono, you're wrong. Sorry.
But I do think that it's still in the top 5 best performances of the week. It was, particularly that first quarter, she was extremely dynamic, looking like a bit like Monconti, hitting targets as well by foot in a way that players often playing at speed don't do early in their career.
I mean, for a 19-year-old, and she's had 15 touches in the first half, and she was involved in everything. You know, she was taking intercept marks, she was kicking goals, she was, goal assists, she was getting clearances. Nothing she couldn't do. It was incredible to see.
It was an awesome performance. And on awesome performances, let's move across to the shipping report. Mel, was yours an awesome performance?
Oh, first again. I mean, I'm being thrown to first again, sorry. No, I came first this round, actually, in case you didn't know.
Did you?
Yeah.
You got round rank 1.
Yeah.
You won one of the Sharons, the $240 Sharons.
Oh, that would have been nice. Done. Oh, no, but I got a free yellow one at the game, which is kind of counts. I did not have a good week. I lost to Jono, which is the main thing that I had going for me. My score was 1244. I went down 100-ish points. Rank spots to 1581, which is not what you want. But that's okay. I'm now only 200 behind Jono, so I'm going to make it up. My good call was holding row bottom for 115. That was nice after I was bummed that I wasn't going to be able to get the trade combo to trade her out. So I'll take that. That was one of the only good things that happened for my team this week. Because the bad call was putting Finn on my bench as my second highest defender. But then also not trading Criswell for her 21 or so.
Yeah.
I had a lot of low scores this week. Lots of small numbers, which I didn't like. And then my blind side was I really thought that Strom was going to smash O'Dowd to bits, especially if O'Dowd had a bit of an injury. Strom was going to be on fire. But they came surprisingly close to each other in terms of points. Which I didn't love to see because that was a direct trade I had done that cost me a lot of money. So she was a bit slower. She ended on 108, so a decent score, but I was really hoping for a big one.
Yeah, it was certainly hampered by, there not being a lot of forced stoppages, but also Mimstrom had a really quiet first quarter, gave away, I think, 2 or 3 free kicks, and some of them were horrific. That was one of my takeaways from the weekend. The umpiring from, I think there was like 1 or 2 of the kind of central controlling umpires for that GWS Fremantle game. I was like tearing my hair out going like, how have you just given... It was absolutely
As in she didn't
horrific.
Deserve the free kick? It shouldn't have been 3 against her?
All. It should have been... No, like there was just... For Strom, like, yeah, she had frees against her. Should never have been given.
That's what I was thinking when I was watching the game. It looked like she was just getting a bit bullied around. But anyway, so that was annoying.
Yeah, but we'll definitely be talking about Mimstrom later because, I have a feeling that a number of people will have traded her in.
Yes, well,
because
where
Kate Hoare was out.
I was going to say, we're kind of like bearing the lead here. That was my post-trade Hoare 1 hour before the game traderoo of Hoare's a lot of money to not play this week. So I used her to upgrade to Strom, which I'm excited that I got to do that, and I have Strom in my team. But the people that held her are going to be in good form this week to have her sitting there and not have to worry about a trade with that.
Well, interestingly enough, she's 1.4 million, comes up against Alice Edmonds, and played lower time on ground, but that's just flagging for a chat that we might have later. Now, second cab off the rank is actually the Tamara Smith team. So it had a 1261, so down 116 spots to 520. That was in part due to me not having had a chance to trade out Kate Hoare, who was ably replaced by Megan Gaffney for her highest score of the year of like 38 or 39. But that was a really unfortunate out. And that's the lowest I think the Tamara Smith team has been all year, which should tell you something about the rest of our seasons. Yep. Next up, we've got Will. How'd you go?
Yeah, I scored a 1300 flat, which going into this shipping report, I thought, I think I've tanked it this week, but I haven't actually done too badly in the scheme of things. And what's more important is that I'm still racing up the leaderboard all the way up to 3,500, which is a rise of about 270 spots. So streaming ahead. Surely this week is the week that I crack the top 1,000. So my good call
on round rank.
On round, overall. Like surely I'm making that up this week.
I hear you.
My good call, similar to Mel, happy to have kept Charlie Rowbottom, and also keeping Eilish O'Dowd, who, as Mel said, did pretty well against Mimstrom and got a 91, which was a lot more than I think most people expected, especially given my trade plans this week had hinged on trading Eilish O'Dowd out, and I'll talk to that in just a second. My bad call was that the Kate Hoare laid out meant that I basically just went for a complete forward line renovation. I traded out Kate Hoare, George Garnett, and Michaela Paunger, which wasn't the bad call in itself. It was more who I brought in, because I brought in Ash Saint, Jack DePie, and Casey Sheriff, and none of them passed 53, which was a bit disappointing. I could have gone for Bonnie Toogood, Taylor Smith, and Kate Sheila, all of who cost less money and would have had 90 more points.
Oof.
So that was great.
That's rough.
But my blind side was actually Emily Fiedler being outmanaged this week, because my trade plan had hinged on fielding Fiedler. That's a tough one. Fielding Fiedler and trading out O'Dowd to get a stack of money to upgrade Sarah Verrier and fix up my forward line. But it wasn't meant to be, because Kate Hoare was out, so I did my forward line renovation, which looked good on paper and then wasn't. So, yeah.
Yeah, you put your prayers on Ash Saint. She didn't follow through. I've also just looked up what Sarah Verrier scored on the weekend, and oof. That's a tasty 33.
Correct. And even though I could have had Dana Finn's 75, the original plan was to trade her out for a better defender anyway, and that didn't eventuate. So, bad luck.
Very, very annoying. Now,
Verrier.
Very, very annoying. I'm up next. I scored a 13-15. Not a great week. So that's a round rank of 14-14 and pushed me down the ranks 40 spots. My good call for the week was going Kate Hoare to Bonnie Toogood, which was, I'm sure, what a lot of people would have done to finance an upgrade of Eilish O'Dowd to Mimstrom. I think that part of it worked really well. I think I just kind of felt as though the score last week was not an indication of her coming back from injury. It was more an indication of the matchup she was playing against. And if she was able to score nearly a 70 in that slop against the Western Bulldogs, look, I can probably get a 70 this week against Richmond. and it would give me the cash to make up a bunch of other fixes. So that was my good call. My bad call was not using any of the cash that I saved to upgrade Zali Goldsworthy or even sideways. I had planned for quite a while to sideways to Georgie Prespakis, who ended up getting 20, 25 extra points, which I really could have done with. Zali's role is stinky as it comes at the moment. It's stay at the CBA, kick the ball forward, and then just go sit forward. And I don't think I've seen many teams hit targets over halfway than GWS in the AFLW. They are dead rotten. It is a brutal watch.
Zali's fall from grace has got to be one of the most spectacular, just her role, her seemingly confidence around the ball, like the amount of time that she's she's allowed to do, where she's allowed to play. She's gone from being the number one player for a club and really like carrying them to kind of being put in a corner and so just these are your bounds, stay within them. And just what wasted potential. And she doesn't look happy about it either.
She looks so sad.
It really speaks to their lack of forward options, because part of the reason why is you had Huntington playing a bit more forward up here. They played Parker up forward and Zali was playing through that midfield. And this year, Huntington sitting back, Parker's playing more midfield. So they've just said, Zali, you're our full forward now. And it's looking good.
It's also just like, she does start at CBA, so her CBA numbers look like they're great, full-time, every single one. She doesn't come off the ground, but their stoppage style is, if it gets to Zali, she sits at the back of the stoppage. If it doesn't get a tackle or it goes the other way, then she doesn't follow.
Yeah.
She just goes and then runs forward, and when the ball does get in her area a few times, she tries to lay a few tackles, but she just looks despondent. She looks like she's not enjoying her football. Now, she signed a 4-year extension last off-season. But if I'm, and I said this on Twitter over the weekend, if I'm Zali Goldsworthy, I'm rocking up to my exit meeting and saying, I need a new role, a new coach, or a trade. End of story. She's that good, she would have every single other club in the comp lining up to offer a deal if she asked for a trade. Or if she, the contract just ended this season and she was a free agent. So that was certainly a bad call, not upgrading her. She did not score very well, and it was a very frustrating watch. In terms of the blind side, now, it's a blind side for me how bad this was. Eileen Gilroy scoring 25 after she'd gone 96 the week prior. I want to say that first, I want to preface this by saying Jono mentioned in the Fantasy Fix article that, Eileen Gilroy was probably a bit of a trap. Now, I think there was something to the fact that Melbourne are a better side and she was probably going to get some more attention. I also think that the return of Casey Sheriff meant that there was another person playing a near identical role to Gilroy. That meant that Gilroy's kind of control of the possessions that she typically gets in that half-forward wing area was down. It was also just, she could not take a mark. She had a few go through her hands a bunch of times, stuck out an arm for a tackle, kind of player just breaks through, gets a hand pass, kind of goes semi towards a player, and then the Melbourne player picks the ball up. So that was a blind side. I knew she had downside risk. There's a capability of playing that role and only scoring 40s and 50s. I just didn't expect a 25. So that hurt. Well, I'm glad that I've got to end on a happy note. And Jono, I get to throw to you because you have won this week.
And thank God, because I feel like I came last week and the week before, and I'm bouncing back. It's good. It's good. Just pipped you with a 1,325, which means my overall rank is 1,373. I'm very hopeful that next week I can outscore my rank. That is a goal. That's coming from here.
Ooh, that's a good call. I'd like to think I can do the same. Will, how about you?
Oh, that's how I'm getting into the top 1,000, Liam.
I mean, guys, the trick to this is just write them in the wrong box and then you will outscore your rank because you read them out wrong. Easy.
Yeah, I suppose speaking of good calls, it's not really one that I've had to do much recently about, but just Serene Watson has just gotten better and better as the season has gone on, and I've been loving what she's been doing. So Anani, I think one it was this week. Very, very, very happy with Serene Watson's efforts. My bad call was similarly trading out Zali, not trading out Zali Goldsworthy. I traded out the wrong GWS player, getting rid of Eilish O'Dowd, and ended up losing 20 points there, bringing in Talia Hickey. But that's all right. We have to fix our trades. I guess the blind side this week, it's the fact that I get to this part of the season, and no matter how often I do it poorly, I don't learn from my mistakes, and I continue to do the thing that I'm bad at, which is trading at the end of the season. I had the option this week to just do one less trade because I deliberately put Chaplin on the bench going, I'll see how she goes. I'm not confident against the Hawks. And when she went poorly, I could have taken Wotherspoon's 64 and traded in a premium defender to cover Chaplin. But it meant that I only got to replace one player in my field rather than two because of the way that my trades would have, worked out. And had I just done that, I would have gained 9 points from Zali's 55. I would have replaced Chaplin's 32, 39. I can't remember what it was. It would have been way better off. But instead I thought, you know what? 2 is better than 1. And that's...
What did you end up?
I ended up bringing in Gabby O'Sullivan for a 50 and Talia Hickey for 20 points less than if I hadn't traded her in. So,
oof.
That
hurts.
It was fine, but it just could have been better. It could have been better. So
Your own worst enemy.
In fairness to you, I did think that Zali could be better. That's a high stoppage team in Fremantle, and I really did just there's that bit of hope going, I really think that this might be the game that she starts tackling better again. But as it turns out, she played deep forward and it sucked. So
yeah,
I don't think you could have expected she would go below Riley Wotherspoon 65 or whatever it was, mid-60 score. Now, Will, we've got one left. After this, the Watch and Wait scoreboard, please take it away.
Watch and Wait scoreboard has been fairly static, actually. Once again, Brett W, Kiwi 5, sitting on top with 15,055 points. A terrible score for them this week of only 1,356. But yeah, still a fair bit ahead, 126 points ahead of the next best, which is Carl W's Supreme team. Who did score a massive score of 14.25 this week, so they did gain, but there's still a fair bit to catch up. In terms of the top score of the week, congratulations to Luke B's Ava's Angels, which scored 15.52, which is just madness. Absolutely madness, that. In terms of the top 100 score, we've got Jamie N's team, who is sitting on 14,266. You needed a score of 1375 to stay in this week, so bad luck to Brett W. You're not staying in the top 100 this week.
Loser territory.
Terrible. But yes, big scores still need to stay in that top 100. Free Kick League, we still have 41 top 100 players, which is the same as last week. But we've currently got the 101st ranked player, which is Guy M. Trunky's Heroines, just outside of the top 100 on 1 point. So good luck to you, Guy. We hope you can make it in the top 100 to get us up to 42. Hopefully not kicking out one of our other players.
We hope
but yes,
not.
Otherwise, it's going to be a very exciting final week.
It is indeed going to be a very exciting final week, which means I can move across to the hot topics. Pretty simple tonight. It's going to be just some injury chat right up front. I feel like we had a bunch of key players actually injured this time as opposed to last one when we talked about some of them and then none of them ended up missing. They were all tested and then played. And then we're just going to do a line-by-line underperform and overperform. So who is someone that is highly priced that you expect to go unders and who is someone who is less highly owned, less popular, who you expect to outperform their price stat score. It's going to be super simple this week. It's the final week of trades. There's not too much that we can overcomplicate it. So in terms of the... Okay, we're not going to overcomplicate it to the factor of an hour and a half. Let's put it that way.
And that's because we have the magic of editing.
I really don't think it's going to get that far. So up front, the main one to talk about, we've already mentioned it. It was Kate Hall leaving with quad awareness. Now, I went back over today and had a look at the comments that were made in the article from the Melbourne website. And she had quad awareness at Tuesday's session, went for a scan, it was negative, got through final Thursday training, but then pulled up sore in the morning. And importantly for anyone that held, or anyone that's considering trading back into their side, apparently they took a precautionary approach and are hopeful she will only be sidelined for that single game. So that is certainly going to be fascinating because I do think that she will have been traded out. She was the most highly owned player outside of Ebony Marinoff inside the top 100. So she is going to be a fascinating target for those that have really good team value and are going to be able to bring someone in. Just off the rip, is anyone here interested in actually doing that?
I think the matchup against Collingwood is a good one. It's one of those ones we're going to have to wait till she's named. And even then, it's no certainty. I think that unless you're doing really, really well, I think it's a very risky play.
I think that she is just going to be unaffordable for a lot of people because at 1.124, like if you've traded out, you've thrown that money into someone else like a Strom or another premium upgrade in your midfield. You're not going to be undoing whatever trade you've done on that side. So I think people are going to struggle to find the cash. But I'd also be surprised that I suspect a lot of people would actually still have her as well because it was such a late out, being only 1 hour before. Like she's still 49% owned in the game. I don't know how many of those are in the top 100. I have not checked that live.
I can tell you it's 490 of the top 1,000, but only 26 in the top 100 still have her.
Yeah, so top 100 had mass exodus. But I just think she's going to be unaffordable. I wouldn't be surprised if it stays at about 26.
Interesting. I think it's going to be, one, if you're looking to try and make back up ranks, it could be the play to go. But again, it's going to come down to what we hear in the injury report. I think it was clearly quite bad because that was an important game for Melbourne to win, and she's their captain. She still couldn't get up to play. So that tells me they were a little bit worried about the extent of a potential injury. The next one that was very disappointing to see was Daisy Darcy, who has been one of my favourite picks of the season. She was on 52 with a couple of seconds to go, basically in the second quarter, and her knee gave way inwards. She looked in a lot of discomfort. We've not heard anything confirmed, but it looked like some kind of ligament injury. I highly doubt she's playing this week up against North Melbourne. It's going to be very disappointing that she will have now lost about 200k across 2 weeks.
Yeah, I saw this one live, and it's probably at best an MCL, at worst the dreaded ACL. Really hoping that it's neither of those, obviously, but I think it'd be very unlikely to play this week. And she'd been such a great player playing through that midfield for the Suns, so it's going to make this week's matchup is arguably the toughest in football. It's going to make it even harder, so it does open up a midfield spot at the Gold Coast, which could be something interesting in terms of where the points will go, which we'll talk about a bit later, but yeah, it's a devastating blow for Dizzy Darcy.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one that we've just got to keep our eyes out for, Sinead Goldrick went off late. Now, we have not heard confirmation because my understanding was she had not had a chance to complete her HIA prior to the end of the game. So we don't know if she was actually concussed, and Mick Stenier after the game said he'd been talking to her and she hadn't mentioned it, or he hadn't got confirmation from the doctors. So one to definitely watch for. It would be a fairly unfortunately timed out as well, given if you've got Daisy Darcy like me, you already need to replace her. Then the final one, and she's not a particularly highly owned player, but has been a decent scorer this year inside the top handful of rucks. Steph Wales confirmed ACL, which is pretty devastating for the Bombers. I really think that you could not ask for a worse series of matchups. The Bombers have Carlton this week and their trio of very, very tall players. And then our likely finals opponent comes out of, if we make finals, we're finishing most likely 8th, and we are either hitting Mim Strom, Jess Allen, Matilda Schultz, or Poppy Kelly. Like, it's real grim areas for the Bombers. So very, very disappointing as a fan, but also always sad to see someone do an ACL. We had a bunch of injuries we talked about last week. In terms of kind of the ones that we saw, we had O'Dowd and Randall. Did anyone see anything from either of them on the weekend that suggested that they may be a watch for an out this week?
I don't think there's a watch for an out necessarily, but the one that I do have a bit of concern with is Chelsea Randall. I think that the role that she can play is probably not going to be as impactful, simply because I think if she breaks her face again, it's probably season over. I think that that's probably the main one I'd look out for, but she played through it, played a reasonably good game. Who knows, maybe if the swelling goes down a bit, she'll just come back fit and firing for another week.
She had an incredible third quarter where was involved in everything inside forward 50, and Adelaide have a must-game win game this week, so I expect her to play.
I think there's no doubt that she plays. No doubt that she plays, 100%.
Yeah, she was as aggressive as ever and had longer time on ground. So I'm confident that she'll play, and I'm expected she'll also play like to her full ability. And then maybe she gets potentially rested in finals, but we don't care because fantasy is over.
Exactly. Now the final one to mention is Ailish Sheeran has been sent directly to the tribunal for umpire contact. Now, that has happened just before we've started recording, so it'll be fascinating to see what happens there. I've seen the incident kind of a couple of times on video. It does look like she's gone to push off Jean Anscorn. Jean Anscorn has fallen and taken out the legs of the umpire. I don't know about you guys, but I've never seen an incident like that really at AFL or AFLW level, so I really don't know how the tribunal is going to handle it.
The drama in Nanscorn's fall, like it's not just like a little stumble, it's like she's been thrown at the umpire. Like I don't know if she was off balance or if Eilish has pushed her really, really hard or like if the umpire was just in the way so it makes the fall look dramatic, but like that, it doesn't look good, put it that way.
No, it definitely didn't. It was also kind of humid, and that may have actually impacted like her feet coming out from under her. So that's the injury topics. Now, across to the bulk of the episode, which is the overperformers and underperformers. I'm going to do this line by line. I want everyone's got prepared some answers for who do they think will overperform their priced at and who do they think will underperform. We'll start with defenders, and we'll start with Will. Who have you got as your overperformer and your underperformer this week?
My overperformer is Geordie Allen, finally hitting the form that we were hoping to see earlier in the season, playing a bit more of a fantasy-friendly role. Came forward, kicked a goal against Carlton as well, which is great. Been over 60 the last few weeks, and is a fairly unique option as well, playing against Melbourne, who aren't too bad to score against either.
That's pretty solid. And your underperformer?
My underperformer, I've actually put Ailish Sheeran, mainly because if she gets suspended, that's going to be a big underperform. But I think that she'll still score well, but Hawthorn, they are playing Hawthorn, I believe. Hawthorn are a fairly restrictive team. I think Hawthorn will be putting a fair bit of effort into stopping her and Mon Con. So I think that while I still would say an 80 or something like that isn't out of the equation, I don't think you're seeing another 117.
Yeah, I don't think 117 is happening, and it's probably unsustainable, but I also think that it will come down to what game style we end up seeing. Is it the run and spread kind of transition team from Hawthorn, or is it the stoppage style where I think that we'll see a pretty excellent performance from Sheeran, particularly if there's attention put into Monconti. Now, Mel, I'll throw to you next. Actually, no, I haven't thrown to Jono, not last for a while. Who have you got as your overperformer?
I think my overperformer this week, I've gone with a Hawk in Jenna Richardson. She's been in pretty stellar form recently, and I think she's getting better as the season goes on. I kind of expect her to keep the train rolling against the Tigers.
That is an interesting one. Now, we saw Maddie Gay and Georgia Clark both with decent scores this week.
Yeah.
In giving your recommendation for Richardson, do you have an educated guess on who she might actually be playing against or playing on?
Yeah, my main concern is that she'll be playing on someone like Caitlin Greiser, which might require her to lock down a little bit. But I think the Hawks are very likely to kind of move the ball around the back at Swinburne, is my expectation. I think with how the Hawks are placed this weekend, if we are up at halftime, I expect us to slow the game right down at that point. So that's my main thought behind it.
Yep, I definitely buy it, and Richmond have been a slightly positive defender matchup for the past 6 games or so. So, yeah, I'm definitely on board with that kind of thinking. And then who have you got as your underperformer?
My underperformer is someone that I've already talked up this episode. It's Serene Watson. I expect the Lions to be vicious this week. I think they're going to go all out. They need to get percentage if they are any chance to jump into second spot over the Hawks. And I expect they're going to put the sword to the Saints.
I think the only advantage Serene Watson has, and why, if I've got her, I'm probably not trading her. Brisbane are an inconsistently accurate team, and she's the only one who takes kick-ins. That's a plus.
Yeah.
And she has gotten better in the last few weeks, has not had a single point not taken.
Yeah, we just basically need to hope that this isn't what I'll call the Sarah Sansonetti effect from last year, which is that every time the ball goes inside, it just walks over the top and straight into goal, so there's no kick-ins, no marks, nothing like that.
Yeah, agreed. And I do think that you're right in saying that I do expect her to underperform her price stat. It's just, is she...
I'm not trading her out as a...
Yeah.
I wouldn't go that far.
I'm just imagining now this nightmare scenario, which is Eilish Sheeran is suspended, Dizzy Darcy and Sinead Goldrick are all injured, and so I'm forced to make 3 trades in defence.
Yep.
That's a depressing thought for me, given the trades that I need to be able to make. Mel, give us your overperformer in the defenders.
This one has been hard. I've been thinking about this for a bit and changed my mind a few times, but I'm going to go... I've locked it in. I'm going to go with Gabby Newton because even though she is the 3rd highest averaging defender, they're Freo coming up against Bulldogs who might be good, might be bad. Really don't know where they're going to go this week. And Gabby Newton is going to be perfect for that role because she can be thrown forwards and back. So she's someone that's going to be highly utilised regardless. And I think that bodes really well for her to be... the kind of tall marking target, but also thrown back when needed and just being everywhere in the game, having lots of opportunities for kicks. She had a really good game when she played a similar kind of well-needed role against the Eagles for a little bit and came away with 102. So I'm hopeful that she can be going above her average, and she lost a little bit of money last week. So I think she could be a good pick-in for final round.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be... Which role is she going to get? Is it the West Coast Eagles derby role, or is it the game style that... Oops.
You did that on purpose. You know how much I hate that.
Oh, dearie me. Oh, it's a silly word.
Oh, WA pronouncing their words with the correct vowel. What a shame.
Now, looking at the run sheet, we've got the underperformer, and it's currently blank. Mel, so you think everyone's outperforming their average this week then?
I was tossing up,
positive.
Does Finn go over? Does Finn go under? In the end, I think Finn's fine. I don't think she's that noteworthy, but I just don't want to skim over the fact that we've got Darcy and Goldrick if they are playing. Jono's like, no, you can't do that.
No, you cannot.
No, it's just bringing up Finn to be like, I think they're going to be middle. Just... No context to the listeners.
I think Dana Finn is a good pick to underperform this week.
Yeah.
The Bombers are a tough matchup for wins, generally. And I just think that she definitely had an out-of-the-box week.
She did have a big one. I think she kind of proved herself in her role and that she can go forward if needed as well with that good potential there, the goal. But... like her role on the wing was very well utilised last game. I just don't know if it will be again. But also I just don't know how many radars she's on. So the underperformer overall is me. Let's move right along.
Been written in the run sheet. In terms of my overperformer, I've got Elizabeth Georgia-Stathis. She had a great game against St Kilda. Has definitely shown the role that we saw at the back end of last year, but did not exist at the beginning of this year because it was a 4 in week 1.
Something low.
5? Like,
she does not win the
single
prize
digit.
for consistency, that's for sure.
No, but coming off a 75, she's obviously a little bit more expensive than the 660k she was 2 weeks ago. But I do think with the matchup this week, I think that she's in a great spot to be able to score points. Fremantle are a great scoring matchup for defenders, and the new Western Bulldogs are actually playing measured, passing football in the back half and then looking to try and explode once they get into the forward half. And I'm sitting there going, well, why didn't that happen against the Bombers?
Yeah, and if you take away that 5 points that she scored in round 1, she's actually had a pretty decent year, Georgia Stathis. It's just that 5 in the first round threw everything out for all the coaches that were looking at her, and I think it's taken a little bit for people to actually recover thinking, yeah, I can trust Georgia Stathis. And I'm one of those people, because I have her in the team.
Yeah, I'm looking at potentially bringing her in this week. Another one I just want to throw out there, Georgia Clark may be injured for the Bombers, and they come into an incredible defender matchup for general defenders and key defenders. Alex Morecambe. She is super cheap, and I expect her, and had like a decent second half. She's 556k. I think she could easily score above 65 this week, and the Bombers are in the same position as Hawthorn. If they're up late, they will probably be looking to sit in the ball. In terms of my underperformer, I have Ella Heads. Now, West Coast are not a good matchup for general defenders or designated kickers. I don't think that Heads has shown the same ceiling as we've seen in the past. She's at 830k. I think that she could really struggle this week. I'm thinking it could be a score in the 50s.
About the same as the rest of my team.
She would fit in very well down at the whatchamacallit. Down at the whatchamacallit Nina effect. That's the one. All right, now let's move across to the midfielders then. Jono, you first. Who is your overperformer?
In the midfield, I've gone with Elise Parker. She's hit a vein of form recently and is just tearing it up. And I see no reason why she can't keep it going this week. I think they're playing the Power, which is a difficult matchup, but I don't know. I don't see her slowing down.
I think it's actually a great matchup based on what we saw from Charlie Rowbottom, who looked back to form.
Yeah.
And then your underperformer.
My underperformer is going to be Ash Riddell. I get the feeling that North are going to have this game done and dusted by half-time, and with all of the little injury concerns that we've heard, I'm looking at resting before finals. You want your key players fit and firing, and I think they might give her a very low time on ground, even compared to a normal time on ground. So
it pains me to admit it, but I agree. Because she's clearly dealing with some foot, ankle, toe complaint. Her time on ground hasn't been spectacular. She finally got back up above 100. It took until after the game to get 4 points added to get there. But yeah, I think it will take a fairly odd performance for North to be in a spot where she needs to play bulk minutes in the midfield. The only reason for hope might be that Jazz Garner can also get rested forward, and I just don't know if they have enough midfielders for Riddell to rest like maximum amounts of time. That's my only thought. It's my only hope, because at this stage there is no chance I'm going to have to trade her out. If you're ranked very highly though, how much would you be considering it?
Oh, if I had a complete team and I didn't have to deal with all the disasters that are coming in our backlines, and I was sitting there with Marinoff, Garner, Rowbottom, and Gardner, and I could bring in someone like McCarthy or Parker, I'd be very strongly considering it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Mel, you next. Who have you got as your overperformer?
So I've gone with Carlton. No. I did what Jono did before. I've gone with Collingwood. But I reckon someone like a Ramos has been playing really, really well. Like, we know that there's the big two names at Collingwood, but I think the midfielders have got a good matchup next week, and it could be someone that we don't expect as much, like a Michaela Cann or a Ramos that really shines in this last week. And I also wanted to mix it up and give a slightly lower priced option because a lot of these that we're talking about are like primos because you're doing some good primo sideways trades. But if you're looking for an M5 option, I think a cheaper Collingwood midfielder like Ramos or Can could be a good option.
That's pretty solid analysis. And then I also think that means you're probably endorsing Britt Bonici as a target too.
Yeah,
as an
if you can afford it, yeah.
Yeah, I think the analysis is there. I think Melbourne have shown themselves, even with an improved team, to still be allowing midfield points. Now, in terms of midfield points, this one player did not have a good set. Did not have a good week.
No, T. Smith at St Kilda hasn't done it. She got a 64, which is fine, but I think she's coming up against Brisbane next week. So how highly is she owned actually? Oh, well, to the 3.66% of people that have her, I would recommend trading her out. But I just think we know that St Kilda are going to be really struggling when they come up against Brisbane next week anyway. That's a really tough midfielder matchup. And I was thinking of highly owned St Kilda midfielders, and I have T. Smith personally, so that was influencing this decision. But I think it's time to go for any midfielders at St Kilda.
Yep, not bad either.
Do you know that six of the top 100 coaches have her on field, and one has her on the bench?
Could possibly be looping.
Why would you loop with Tiana Smith? She's playing.
As in you will have had a non-playing player.
Oh, gotcha.
Jono, are you just not interested by this point, or is there a fly in the room?
There is a fly in the room, yeah.
I'm just like, what about this is so...
I raised the point. Why would I...
what are you... Why? Stop talking, Liam. All right. I do like that thinking as well. I think T. Smith looked a bit down on form, and I do think that St Kilda are whimpering to the finish line this season after a hot start. Will, who have you got as your overperformer?
Yeah, I've gone for kind of the opposite to Jono, which is I think that both Garner and Riddell could see a bit of rest time. So I think the overperformer could be Mia King, who we know can put up some pretty decent scores. Got 120 earlier in the year. And if she gets more of that premium midfield time, I think she could be in for a really big one, especially at home against a team that has been battered pillar to post in Gold Coast, also in Indigenous round as well. So I think Mia King could be in for a big one and benefit from a bit of in-game resting.
Just before we move on to your underperformer, I remember someone having the same theory last week and then suggesting it could be Bruton that steps up, who stepped up and into a 20. Who was that?
That would be Jono.
Look, it was something that I called a high risk, high reward theory.
And it was high risk.
Yep.
Yeah. And low reward. It hasn't paid off yet. That's all I'm saying.
I was going to let that one slide through to the keeper, Mel.
No, well, I was just interested because it's the same theory going into the logic behind Mia King. So just wanted to...
Yeah, I think Mia King is playing in the midfield.
She just might play.
This is the safe version of that same theory.
Yes, this is picking the player who's already doing it, who probably just competes with fewer uber elite superstars. I will just say though...
Sorry, as we know, I am prone to picking safe picks, so that's why I'm picking this one, John.
Exactly. Mia King was a target for a lot of teams round 10 last year, and then was a late out with an hour to go. Rest.
Nice.
So there's not a very auspicious connection there. In terms of my overperformer, I think Georgia.
Wow, I've just been completely ignored for the underperform.
Oh yeah, sorry, I completely forgot. Will, who have you got underperforming?
My underperforming in the midfield is Liam Tomlinson
and his host.
Oof. I do play in the midfield when I play, so I'll take that.
That's fair. I play on the bench. So my underperformer, I've gone for Anne Hatchard, who has been very good this year, but in terms of fantasy, has kind of just been there or thereabouts. I think this matchup against Geelong is going to be a really interesting one because Adelaide will be wanting to sew up a top 4 spot. Geelong will be hoping to win that game to keep their very faint hopes alive. We know that Geelong's been in a bit better form in the last few weeks, a bit harder to score against unless your name's Ella Roberts. But I expect that one E. Marinoff might be the one that gets that benefit. So I think Hatchard probably could get up to, 80s and 90s fairly standard, but I can't see a big one for Anne Hatchard. So I think if you're looking for a player to move sideways, Hatchard's the one I would be looking for.
Would you be going Hatchard out, Riddell out?
I would be going Riddell out, simply because I think Hatchard will play the full game, and I think Riddell is more of a chance to be rested.
I like your use of E. Marinoff. You haven't been tapped on the shoulder to be presenting the League Best and Fairest, have you?
I absolutely wish.
Doing a little bit of practice?
I'm going to be calling up and trying to throw my hat in the ring for that, because I would love to do that.
Oh, well, I think that's some hopeful thinking. I won't call it wishful. In terms of my...
I would say hopeful's above wishful, so I'm going to say that that's a sure thing now.
Okay, I'm going to call it impossible then.
Damn it.
I'm going to really drag it back down. Not impossibly high scoring, Jean Ann Scorn this week up against Carlton. I think it's a great matchup for her. She had a great game against them round about this time last year. I really think that she could be on track for a massive score this week. I expect to some degree that the same Carlton team that threw Mez Anthony at Ali Anderson will probably try and do something with Maddie Prasparkas, and Jean Ann Scorn gets freed up every time that happens.
This is, of course, on the proviso that she doesn't get suspended for umpire contact after being pushed into an umpire by Isla Sharon.
It is actually an offence called becoming a missile hitting an umpire, and it's actually 17-week suspension. So that would be very unfortunate, but we're yet to hear the result of that one. In terms of my underperformer, this is making it complicated because it's just all of my own midfield. It is Charlie Rowbottom, because up against North, she has definitely looked tired at the back end of this season. I think she's going to have to shoulder even more of a load, because as soon as she never gets to have a week with all three of the best midfielders at Gold Coast, because last week it was Lucy Single who missed. This week it will almost certainly be Daisy Darcy who misses.
Whitford
and going up against North Melbourne, or she was missing Whitford for 2 weeks before that. Like, it's just dire straits for someone who looks really tired, shouldering a full load in the midfield, and goes up against North, who even at half speed look incredible.
Well, I'm just wondering, I hear what you're saying, and I do think she's tired, and I'm definitely not trading into her if I don't have her. But in terms of priorities to trade out, if we're talking about North Melbourne resting a lot of their midfield, then I like the flip side of that for Charlie Rowbottom having potentially more tackleable targets in the midfield.
I agree. I think that's a very good point, and it adds into the point that Gold Coast are done. Like, this is their last game in round 10 for the season. And why not go all out for one last game? Like, she does look kind of tired, but she showed 115 last week, so she's clearly got some energy reserves left. If she's going to go out and have a great last game on a game that doesn't really matter, just for funsies and go big, I think it could be this one. I think she has shown that she has energy left after such a big week last week. So, and she doesn't look like a quitter. She's not someone that's going to go easy in the last game just because the season's done. I think she's more likely to go out with a bang and then rest her sore, tired body after that during the final season.
I really think that it sounds like she's either going to score a 60 or she's going to score about 130.
I'm team 130.
So how I
take
feel
your gamble.
I need to be team 130.
Yep,
because I don't have much else that I can do. But I do think that she probably sits below Anne Hatchard for need to trade out. But I will say that I forgot to say this earlier. Anne Hatchard, my concern is her sitting forward, because Adelaide have had forward issues for quite a while, or at least in some fixtures in the back half of this year. Now, we've got rucks. We maybe not spend as much time analysing them because we don't typically make as many trades in the ruck. I'll throw to myself first for some fun. I've got Matilda Schultz in there as my overperformer, comes up against Ailish O'Dowd. I just think that Ailish is a great wing player, but she is not going to be able to handle the clearance dominance of Matilda Schultz, who had a down week this past week against Lauren Bella, but this is the week where she could go enormous. So I think if for whatever reason you've held on to O'Dowd, maybe this is the week that you trade, and it's a far less expensive 400k jump to be able to do it. And then my underperformer, I think Jessie Wardlaw. Now, she's not someone that's particularly highly owned, but there was a certain group of people that I'm sure were looking for some value. Wardlaw had a great week up against the Western Bulldogs and had a fair bit of extra time in the ruck. But I do just think that coming up against Brisbane, who don't want that many stoppages and also have a really athletic ruck in Talia Hickey and a great set of defenders, I don't think it's going to be a good week for scoring for Wardlaw. Jono, who have you got as your overperformer?
Yeah, my overperformer is going to be Jess Good, mainly on the fact that Essendon doesn't have a ruck anymore. I don't know who she's going to be up against, but...
Matilda Dyke or Sophie Alexander?
Yeah, that sounds like a 30-plus hit-out game to me.
Yep.
So I think that's about as safe a floor as you're going to get, and under $1 million, which is surprisingly hard to find for a lot of these good rucks.
Agreed.
On the flip side, I think Lauren Bella is in for a tough time. 2 very strong rucks at North Melbourne that are going to be putting her one weapon, which is her hit-outs, under the spotlight, I guess.
Mel, who have you got as your over and underperformers?
You say there's not a lot of good options under $1 million, Jono, but like Jess Good is a great option, and also Jess Allen I think is a fantastic option as well at only 923k. She has been in right form this season. She's really kind of shown that she can be super hit out dominant. She's had 40 plus hit outs in a couple of her more recent games. She's going up against Geelong, who have kind of got the mix of Bragg and Derby as their rucks and are not doing super well there. And they gave away like 40 plus hit outs or something to Lakai the week before with West Coast. So I think Jess Allen is in peak form, going up against weak double rucks in Geelong, opportunity to go big with the hit outs and also just finish off a great season.
Agree wholeheartedly, and excellent for a keeper league that I'm in, where she is my R1. So fingers crossed, it's like 50 million hitouts. Who I'm up against Will, by the way.
I fully agree with the sentiment. It's just she had 40 hitouts this week and still scored a 68. Very good player, though.
So moving on.
Her season has been very good.
Underperform. Unfortunately, I got to give it to my most recent ruck trade-in, which is Strom. I think she's still going to go great and get something like $100 or so, but she's quite expensive. Even with a slightly lower score or like an on-par score with her average, she still went up 32 grand last week. She's now 1.4 mil, like one of the most expensive players in the game. So I think if you've already got her, sweet. Don't be trading anything there. But she might be too expensive for a last round trade-in.
Will, you've got the most Will of names as your overperformer. Who is it?
Honestly, Jono, great players under $1 million. There's one that's under 600,000, and that is everyone's favourite West Coast ruck, Sarah Lakai. 85 against Geelong this week, coming up against a Sydney team that doesn't have a ruck. They're relying on Lexi Hamilton and Giselle Davies, who injured her ankle this week, so they might be without her as well. I think she's a good chance to score you another decent 80-ish score, which if you are looking to do a big money-making trade, maybe that's one you could do.
Here's something for you. How many times this season have West Coast played the same rucks week to week?
I'm going to assume the answer is very infrequently.
Yeah, that's the problem for me. That's the thing that I don't trust, and just really worry that Tess Lyons be the one that
this trade is putting your faith in Sarah Lakai. That is already a very interesting choice. But I think that this is the sort of left field option that could get you from 3,500 all the way up to 3,400.
All right, you heard it here first. She's scoring 1,000.
Putting your trust in a ruck that's 0.77% owned on the platform, whose total week change is 154, to net her only losing 88 grand so far this season.
Exactly.
Oh no, it's a risky move.
It's safe as houses.
It's a unique play, and it might just get some people where they need to be going.
I love it.
Not me, because I'm way, way back through it. But I think it's an interesting potential one.
Why don't we put a pin in that conversation and come back to it in a week when undoubtedly you've been correct and we have to eat crow? Who is your underperformer?
My underperformer, Sabrina Frederick, been an absolute warrior for the Pies this season and the last. I think this one's also partly because Imi Barnett has finally had a extended run in the team and is showing why they were very keen for her to be the number one ruck last year. Scored a very solid 81 points on the weekend. It's been a really good, one shining light, I suppose, in a Collingwood team that hasn't had a whole lot to celebrate. So I don't think a huge amount of people have Sabrina Frederick in their team these days, but I think she's another player that's probably not going to be scoring too many points.
And potentially nursing some kind of calf complaint. She had a lot of strapping on it. Now, for the last line, we've got the forwards. I decided I couldn't be bothered choosing who would go first, so I spun a wheel, Will, while you were talking. And the wisdom of the wheel suggests that we get a block of Will discussion because it suggested you would go first. So who is your overperformer in the forwards?
Oh, the wisdom of the wheel is Will. And
wow.
My wheel wisdom...
Will's wheel wisdom.
My wheel wisdom.
Oh, that's great.
I have put Alice O'Loughlin down as my overperformer, mostly out of hope, because I brought Alice O'Loughlin in, and ever since I did, she has just continually lost money. But basically, they're playing Gold Coast this week. There is a chance that this game could be over in the span of the first 20 minutes, and Alice O'Loughlin could very much be the beneficiary of that, especially given her recent form. Anything over about a 50 is going to be an overperform, so I reckon this one's a fairly safe bet.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. And your underperformer, it's a name we've already mentioned.
Yeah, my underperformer, we mentioned it way back, 1.5 hours ago. It is Chelsea Randall. Chelsea Randall been playing a lot of deep forward, possibly because of that facial injury. I just worry about what role she will have, especially against a solid opposition in Geelong. If you've already got her and you've got other things, I wouldn't worry necessarily about trading her out, but I'd be worried about trading her in.
I think that's a very good point. Now, I throw again to the wheel, and the wheel says Mel is next. Who is your under and over performers?
Speaking of eating crow before, we're now at over an hour. So underperformer is our ability to stay on track because we've added in a lot of nonsense into this podcast. But much like Will, my overperformer here is a hope. I'd really like Too Good to overperform because she is quite cheap and she had a great last week. I'm hoping that she can kick bags against Carlton, and I'd like to bring her into my team because of her price. So I think the signs all point to yes for her. I just really hope it plays out because she's my new forward. F whatever. F2 or so.
Straight into the midfield.
Yep, chuck her in.
Straight. She is that good. And yes, I'd love for that to be true because I think if Bonnie Too Good plays well, the Bombers win. So I think that's very auspicious, and I'm willing to back it 1,000%. Who's your underperformer?
Yeah, I mean, we know that she's already had a very, very good season, but because of that, it's going to be Ash Maloney. She's come off a 115 last week, which is absolutely phenomenal against West Coast, where she kicked 6 goals. But at her price, I just don't know if she's going to be able to back that up against Adelaide. I think they're going to have a much tougher matchup, and she probably will revert back to, I mean, even against a tough team like Brisbane, she got an 80 or so, but something between 70 or 80 is probably what she's going to score. And for your last week with bringing in such an expensive player, that's not really the points that you want for that money. If you've got her, I would either hold or I kind of want to say cash out and use that on someone else. Because
sideways to hold.
Like Strom, for example, what we were talking about with the cashing out is a fine choice, but like Ash Maloney against Adelaide, like that's going to be very, very tough. And actually, yeah, like Tahor could be a good option if you traded her out. Jono?
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I was just looking up some of the other players who've kicked big bags this season, and when Greta Bodie kicked her 6 the following week, locked down closely, only scored a 37. When Danielle Ponta kicked 5 goals against, I think it was the Hawks, 52 the following week. It seems like you're putting a target on your back, and Adelaide definitely have the cattle to stop her. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I think that's the main thing. She's kind of had a target on her back for a lot of weeks this season, though. She's, she'd kicked 15 goals even before kicking a bag of 6. So I think I'd be predicting low 60s and to still have a good game, but probably not blitz it. Now, that means that the wisdom of the wheel says Jono is third of 4. Who have you got as your over and underperformers?
Yeah, so my overperformers, basically it was the Melbourne forward line. I was trying to choose between Alyssa Bannon and the person I've eventually gone with, which is Megan Fitzsimon. I think she's been in good form, but might finally be the week she passes 80. So that's one that I'm excited for.
Passes 7. That would be an impressive week for your overperformer.
I was catching myself on 70. Anyway,
if she's only scoring 7s, anything over a 7 is an overperformance. So I think that's actually not a bad bet.
I think that's actually very good, and I don't think it's a risky play if she's scoring 7 either.
For my underperformer, I'm thinking along the same lines as Mel. It's the Geelong forward line, and I think Kate Sermon's been in quite terrific form recently. One of the reasons that they were able to get over the line against Brisbane, but I don't have as high hopes this week against Adelaide on the rebound. So we'll see.
Now, my overperformer, it's been a bit of a theme. I've only had one line where it hasn't been an Essendon player, and that was the Rucks, because I've got Daria Bannister. I don't think that there's a matchup that'll really be able to go with her in the way that she plays at Carlton. I think that's going to be a recipe for a great score. We know that she's had 80s and 90s in the past when she hasn't got a good matchup. So, yeah, I think that's going to be an excellent player to trade in.
And theoretically, you could have gone for an Essendon player as your ruck, because with Wales going out, someone cheaply priced is going to come into that ruck position and probably overperform what they're doing. So,
yeah, well, I do think that
True.
Sophie Alexander is a possibility as a forward. She's 626k average, priced at 50. She might be able to go 65. I just don't think she's going to be able to ruck very well against the Carlton rucks. And my underperformer, also from the Geelong Carlton game, is Caitlin Gould.
Geelong Carlton?
Oh,
Geelong Carlton. Geelong Crows.
Carlton is everyone this week.
I don't want to think about that Geelong Carlton game because it was the worst game I've ever watched.
Yeah, I agree. That was miserable. That was truly a miserable game to watch. The week I traded in Zali for as well. Caitlin Gould is my underperformer again this week. She's still expensive. I do just think that Geelong have shown themselves to be a tough matchup for key forwards. It's been often the medium-sized forwards that have been able to get off the chain. So she definitely didn't have her world's best performance against North Melbourne, and I could see another 50 this week. All right, well, that took a fair bit longer than we were anticipating. Now, moving across to Captain's Corner, I'm actually going to throw to Jono for this one, because Baranoff is first on my captain's list, but I've got a question for you, because I know you mentioned it last week. What is, if you've got the ability to vice captain, what is the line that you're picking this week to try and chance your arm on Ebony Marinoff? Because you mentioned that we might not want to just captain her straight up.
Yeah, I think it very much depends on the position your team is in. So, if I'm ranked in the top 10, I think the line for Marinoff is, if she scores over 130, it's very rare that anyone's going to be beating that. But if I'm in, say, Guy's position, who's in 101st, and, coming out of that round, it's just 130, and I'm not feeling as confident about the rest of my team and how I'm going to make up the points, potentially I take that on. Yeah. So it really depends, I think, as to what the rest of your team looks like, and if you're a team that's constantly sliding and you need to make up the points to stay in the ranks, maybe this is one that you could look at taking on somehow.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. In terms of the other captains in order, I've got Ali Anderson, Ash McCarthy, Mim Strom, and Elise Parker. And I also think that if you've got it's unfortunate that Marinoff is playing first, and so a lot of the players that you would say, let's VC them and have a look and try and get a really big score. I think Matilda Schultz, Jean Nanscorn are two players that I'm definitely going to be looking at for that kind of score. Which of those 4, 5, 6, 7 players would you say most likely to go above 130 this week?
I'd probably look at one of McCarthy or Anderson. I'm sort of feeling McCarthy. I've got a good vibe there.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, McCarthy's been the more consistent 100-plus scorer, but Ali Anderson obviously has the biggest, one of the second or third biggest score of the season. in that week 2 game against Melbourne. And obviously we're talking about Brisbane need to run up the score. And she still scored okay this week with Tanya Kennedy. So I think that's why I've got her second, but that was a real tough one for me. Ali Anderson is cheap this week. If you are looking to make an upgrade or even a downgrade, I would 100% be targeting Ali Anderson. She didn't make a single person here's overperformer in the midfield, but I definitely think she could overperform this week. Well, that brings us then to our trade plans and our points of weaknesses. Mel, I'll throw to you first. What's the situation in your team?
My situation is I've got Darcy, who needs to go. I've got Goldrick, who could be injured. I've got Sheeran, who could be suspended. I've got Friswell, that's underperforming. And I've got T. Smith, who's going to get flogged against Adelaide. So I've got Brisbane. Just one of the good teams. So I've got a lot of potential outs. It's really about refining who is going out. And currently, I've got Darcy out, T. Smith out, and Friswell. And I'm looking to probably either go like a Nanscorn in the midfield or stack the midfield big and go like a McCarthy. I do like the idea of being able to go Nanscorn and Too Good, though. That works with the money. I'm like, let's just go Bombers heavy, but we'll have to see how that goes. But my objective here is just to beat Jono. So I need 200 more points than Jono, and I'm praying that Strom delivers me those.
Big call.
Have you considered finding a unique player of Jono's and just like smashing their car so they can't make the game? Because that would definitely be a way you could make up 200 points.
Fantasy is not that important to me to resort to violence.
Yeah.
Just to clarify.
Mel's also very aware of the existence of Uber, so that's
it's
one of
not
her...
violence, it's property violence. They're different things.
And my point of weakness in this is going to be captaining Strom, even though I probably shouldn't. But I'm like, it's a player that Jono doesn't have.
That's a good idea. I really do like it. Jono, what's your trade priority for the week?
Well, I also have Daisy Darcy, and we'll probably be trying to get rid of Goldsworthy at the same time. It depends on what happens with Isla Sheeran. But for the moment, I'm presuming until suspended that I'm going to have her available. And thankfully, whilst I didn't get a score of 64, I do get the cash rise of Wotherspoon to make some good trades. So at the moment, I'm probably looking to focus all my efforts on getting in a big midfielder. But we'll see who that is. The real point of weaknesses that I have is that I really want to bring in Jazz Fleming. I currently have her in my side as the big midfielder I'm bringing in. So that's going to be hard to dissuade myself from doing.
It is a very tempting option. That was such an incredible game.
It was
Such
incredible.
an incredible first half. She was on 70 at halftime, I think.
And no one has it. So, she puts up another big game.
You would hope for for 2 halves of 70, not the 2 30s.
Yeah, exactly.
So I like it as an option. Will, not one trade priority. Who is it?
I have a very, very problem. I need to trade out Sarah Verrier. I need to get the backline player that I was planning on getting last week but couldn't thanks to the late Kate Hoare out. Currently, I have just traded a whole lot of bench money in Fiedler and Finn and brought in Isla Sheeran because I want to. I'm very open to... I'm pretty sure we did this last year, which was someone suggesting a very wacky trade for me to do. If anyone has any fantastic, random, unique players that they think would benefit me more than Isla Sheeran, I'd love to find out. But basically, I put as my point of weakness being unable to make a good trade all year, and I think that is likely to continue this week, especially if someone gives me someone completely random to go, because I will probably do it.
Well, Will, that will mean you do need to get on Twitter, throw up a tweet. We'll make sure that we all share it, and we'll get some crowdsourced response, put it to vote, and let's get it done before Thursday night. That was very fun last year.
I do believe last year it was Caitlin Gould, wasn't it?
I think it might have been, yeah. And
I'm pretty sure
the people know.
I'm pretty sure it was Caitlin Gould last year because Caitlin Gould needed, I think it was 4 goals to win the Goal King Award, and I don't know if she kicked any.
No.
And I think scored about a 50.
I think you were considering one, and then there was a crowdsourced trade, and I think they netted out almost exactly the same. So
Yeah.
let's hope for something better this year. Is that going to be your point of weakness?
Probably. I think
whichever. You're actually bringing in Brooke Sheridan, 300k forward from the Bombers.
Look, it can't be worse than most of my other trades this year, so you know what? Let's do it.
Alrighty then. In terms of my trade priorities, it's unsurprisingly Daisy Darcy and Zali Goldsworthy, much like Jono. I think it's. I'm either going to try and finance it with a Mimstrom down and try and make that trade work, because it frees up so much cash for me to do things that I want to do. I really do like the idea of bringing in Elizabeth Georgia-Stathis. In terms of the midfielders I've looked at bringing in, I'm obviously keen on G. Nanscorn. I think that, there are a litany of poor options that I could take. Otherwise, I could maybe chance my arm on Claudia Whitford, who's down at under 930k. Abby Dowrick has a good matchup this week. I'm looking in some dark areas, but I think that also speaks to my point of weakness, which is I cannot be swayed by the fact that I just don't think Zali's going to play like she did last year, and I can't keep hoping like she will, and I need to trade her out. So that's where I'm looking at this week. It's going to be a very fun week. We should savour these moments of anguish as we look at all the injuries in our team, which means that we are at the end of this week's episode. Much like every week, please do make sure that you are subscribed to us wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you're reading the article up on the AFLW website. It also gets shared on our Twitter every single week as well. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram and everywhere else at FreeKickWPod. As a special request, could we maybe ask that over the next couple of weeks, if you have enjoyed listening to us this season, you do throw a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just to let us know what you've enjoyed, what you've not enjoyed as much, and just so that we can show that we've actually had some impact this season. You can find me on Twitter at Liam AFLW Fantasy. Jono, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter or X at FreeKickJono.
I am Freekick Mel.
And I'm Free Kick Will. Go look at my poll.
And absolutely, and we hope that you have a very, very nice week of trading and that you end up at the rank that you wanted to end up at. Until that time, until you hear from us next week, happy trading. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
See you, everyone. Good luck.